Welcome into the Lucas and Lucas podcast. Lucas Frankel alongside Mike Lucas, where the Brooklyn Nets are completely falling apart in every conceivable way. They lost by 23 points to the Celtics on Friday night. They are clinging for dear life to a playoff spot. Mike, I can't believe I'm going to say this. The Nets are in serious jeopardy of outright missing the postseason. I can't believe we reached this point. Tell me I'm not crazy.
No, you're absolutely out of your darn mind, Frankel. They are not in jeopardy whatsoever. Kevin Durant's going to come back. They're going to get Ben Simmons back. This team is going to be just fine with all the pieces. They are playing a G League roster right now. They are playing with their backups. They are playing against teams like Boston, who's won 10 of their last 11 games. I know the All-Star break limits momentum, but Boston's playing as well as anyone in the league right now. I bet on Boston last night. I won. It was the only bet I won last night. You couldn't expect the Nets to win that game. They're playing with guys who, when this team is fully healthy, would not see minutes. They were missing Kyrie Irving, Goran Dragic, Ben Simmons, and Kevin Durant yesterday, among other guys. Like, that is an all-star starting five right there by itself. So, yeah, they're going to struggle without their main guys. You take the top 4 or 5 players off virtually any team in the NBA, and reality check, they're not going to do very well. So, yeah, it's a tough stretch for the Nets. It's frustrating that it has happened for such a prolonged period of time over the middle of the season, where Brooklyn had a chance to really take a stranglehold of the Eastern Conference and establish themselves as the true team to beat in the conference. And now they find themselves in a playoff game position based only on the fact that there's a new play-in system. But let's not forget that they have the best player in the world coming back. They still have all these pieces who will play. And at some point, assuming everyone gets back, which I know is, you can't always assume, this team is as talented as any in the East, and I am not worried in the least bit.
Well, I'm terrified. And one other point that needs to be brought up here is right now, if the season ended today, and that would be the 8th seed. You know who the 7th seed would be? The Toronto Raptors. Would be the playing game, would be the Nets at the Raptors in Toronto. And there's no mandate. There's no mandate to be lifted. Unless Toronto, it doesn't seem like they're going to change anything. But it would be Nets at the Raptors. Would be no Kyrie Irving in that playing game. So that scares the living crap out of me. But also what like we've been waiting for a fully healthy Nets team for what it feels like been a full calendar year. And it just – well, I mean, okay, but in last January when they first got Harden, there was a stretcher for about 8 to 10 games, I would say, where everyone was there, everyone was healthy, and it was euphoric. But since that time, since Kevin Durant hurt his hamstring against the Warriors in that Saturday night game, which we didn't even know he was actually hurt until a few days later, which is still something that still boggles my mind to this day. We've just been waiting, and it just feels like there's 22 games left. Like, I feel like we're going to keep waiting forever, and the chemistry is never going to build. And it just feels like, Mike, I said this as soon as the Yankees lost opening day last year, I feel like I'm almost at the point where I want to say the Brooklyn Nets have no chance to win the championship of the year. It just the Brooklyn Nets, I'll say it a little clearer this time. The Brooklyn Nets, I feel like there's no chance they win the championship this year. It just feels like this constant what ifs are just going to keep happening. And we're going to come to the point where we reach the finish line and things just still aren't right. And it's going to be over just like that. And I can't believe that.
Let me counter with this, Frank, because I do agree that there's not going to be a ton of games for this team to develop chemistry. I think Kevin Durant's the one X factor here that when he's healthy, he trumps everything. But what team in the East scares you? And
Miami scares the living crap out of me. Miami's so...
Hold on. Before you answer that question, keep in mind that Milwaukee has not had its full roster this year.
But those guys
Miami's one injury away from being a 6th seed. They've been lucky. They've been the healthiest team in the East.
Miami competes so hard no matter who's on the court that Eric Spoelstra's got those guys like bulldogs in the cage ready to pounce. So the Heat scare me. The Sixers scare me. How could you not be terrified of Harden and Embiid? Those guys are incredible. The Celtics,
but there's no guarantee Harden's hamstring is automatically cured. And
I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's impossible to say right now. The Chicago Bulls, DeMar DeRozan is playing as he's looking the best player in the NBA right now. And if you got him, you got Levine, you got Lonzo, you got Caruso, you got Vucevic. So that is a stacked team, and people just like giving the Bulls no chance. I think it's preposterous. So right now in the East, clearly, and what also scares the living crap out of me is that the road for the Nets, because at best they're going to be a 6th seed at best, assuming that they go on an absolute tear here once everyone gets fully healthy, which who knows if that will ever happen. The road to the playoffs, the first round matchup will be against either the Bulls, the Bucks, or the Sixers. And
yeah, tough.
That is, and once you get through that, then you got to face, another one of those teams, or like the Heat, or it's going to be this constant avalanche of things that you expect that everyone's just going to, get through it unscathed once they're finally on the court together, I think is so unrealistic. And man, I just can't believe that with all the hype, all the excitement that we had for this team, that it just has never gotten to be the biggest what if in the history of sports.
Yeah. My point was not, should any of these teams scare you? Yeah, they should scare you, but it's not like any team's a juggernaut like Phoenix. Like you look at Phoenix and you say, this team, even without Chris Paul, when he comes back, this team is loaded, locked, and ready to go on all cylinders firing. There's not a team in the East that I look at when healthy. Okay, maybe, but in the current state that I'm necessarily terrified of. And I just think Kevin Durant is that good. And I do believe he will come back at 100%. And he's the great equalizer. When KD's on the floor, Brooklyn doesn't lose. I mean, it's as simple as that. And they could have 4 other nobodies on the court. And if Kevin Durant's the 5th guy, I like Brooklyn's chances. So as long as he gets back, I think the rest of it will all work out. But you're right. They need to start winning some games so they have a chance at maybe avoiding Milwaukee or Miami in that first round and getting in that 4 or 5 spot instead of that 6 spot, because then that turns into playing the 3, the 2, and the 1 seed all in the same postseason.
And I'm so sick of the constant talk every single day about, even Stan Van Gundy last on Thursday night during the broadcast, the Nets are healthy. They're the best team. Stephen A. every day spewing a new Nets thing. There's no one can beat that. I'm so sick. I just want to see it. I'm so sick of the talk and the chatter and the speculation and the hype. Like, can we just see this freaking team play for once? I just want to see it for the love of humanity. And another thing, I guess you believe that just these guys coming back it's just immediate cure-all. All the issues all this team's having, as soon as they finally get their full roster, it's just going to be smooth sailing.
Smooth sailing, no, but I think winning eases over everything. And I think this team, when healthy, has the capability of winning 8 of 9 games. They're going on a 7-game win streak and then rattling off 14 of 16. And when you win, a lot of those minuscule issues that boil up and cause some rifts in the locker room go away. It's a lot harder to get mad at a teammate for not giving you that extra pass when you're winning. When you're losing, yeah, you could look at every little play, put it under a microscope and say, hey, if you made that extra kick to the corner, or hey, you didn't box out your guy that gave up an offensive rebound, that's why we lost. Pointing fingers, that's when little tensions in the locker room boil up. It doesn't happen when you win. And I do think that this team, when healthy, should win 75% of their games. Now, granted, when healthy,
I'm so sick of it.
Yeah, and you should be. I'm sick of it too, because we have been waiting for 2 years or 2 seasons to see a fully healthy Nets team because they have had more talent than any other team in the league. And we've been robbed as fans of that opportunity, Frank. 16 games. 16 games is all we got between James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving, and we can never get those back. I mean, how many did they miss? They played 16 together. They probably didn't play 95 to 100.
Yeah,
if not more.
100.
So, I mean, that's a terrible percentage. We were robbed of it, but I do still believe the addition of Dragic is a nice insurance policy. Kyrie Irving looks like he's going to be able to play more frequently. Kevin Durant, still Kevin Durant, and Ben Simmons, who I believe for a couple different reasons is going to come back, play motivated, and be exactly what this team needs, that those pieces do align to create a team that is capable of competing for an Eastern Conference championship and an NBA championship, regardless of where they end up slotted in the postseason.
You know whose name you didn't mention? Joe Harris. What the hell is going on with Joe Harris? He got hurt on November 14th. 2 weeks later, he underwent surgery. We're told 4 to 8 weeks. It's now February 25th. It's been 3 months. They've been contemplating since early January whether he needs a second surgery. If they would have just gotten that second surgery in early January, he probably would be back by now. I just want them. Why are they taking so long to just announce that Joe Harris is done for the season? I mean, I'm so sick of the constant date. And there was a whole thing with Sean Marks and Michael Grady on the Yes Network. They didn't even mention Joe Harris's name. Like, I don't know if that was on purpose, that was deliberate, or there was a mandate, or I hate the word mandate now. The mandate word is now like the worst word in the English language. But they didn't ask a single question about Joe Harris. I mean, I don't know what. I mean, Joe Harris is I can't believe that he's like such a important. I mean, he was the reason why they lost last year. If you really, really, really boil it down to it, if Joe Harris had just played
1-3, makes 1-3.
Yeah, then the Nets are probably win the championship. But not having Joe Harris and this constant mystery of what he's doing it boggles my mind.
You're paying him $16 million a year. You're getting nothing out of $16 million a year for an entire season, and there's been no clarity. The most frustrating part is the lack of transparency.
Absurd.
I don't know if, why, or why not he hasn't had that second surgery. But if he needs it, just let him get it. And if he doesn't want it, then Joe, figure it out. Like, figure it out. You're either healthy or you're not.
So Steve Nash was quoted as saying, I believe on Thursday, that we'll know by the end of the week. Well, it's the end of the week, so I demand answers. Let's talk about Ben Simmons real quick.
Okay.
What do you think? Let's say you have all the answers, your best guess. And if you want me to go first, I'll actually go first here. What do you think is actually going on with Ben Simmons? Do you believe that if the Sixers never traded him, he would have suited up for the Sixers this year?
No, he would not have. I feel very confident saying that.
So, all right. So let's try to figure this out here. Obviously, mental health is a very serious issue. We're not trying to take it extremely seriously and whatnot. But so Ben, the way this has gone is Ben Simmons decided after the playoffs last year that I'm never playing for the Sixers again. I will do whatever it takes so that I do not play for this team again, whether that until I'm traded or released or they just cut me or whatever. And once I finally get to a new team, then I'll begin my ramp up and play. That seems to me. And I hate to say that he made up his mental health thing, but it just seems like he decided what he did once he changed teams. All right, now I'm going to actually try to play. Is what it seems to me.
Yeah, I think that's a valid conclusion to draw from the evidence that we've been given. I think Ben Simmons is dealing with some sort of mental health issue. It's impossible to put yourself in his shoes because everyone has their own battles with mental health and no two situations are exactly the same. But I think Ben Simmons made up his mind last year that he wasn't going to play for Philadelphia. You could see him in practice. And the one practice he actually participated in did not seem engaged. They kicked him out because he didn't want to do certain drills. He shows up for film in Philadelphia and leaves the facility right after. Like he was not engaged in a way that gave anyone in that organization and or anyone from the outside looking in any indication that he ever would play for them again. Daryl Morey, Doc Rivers, Embiid made it clear that they were going to wait this out until they could find an appropriate trade recipient for a guy who, when healthy and playing, is a top 30 guy in the league. And they found that with the Nets and James Harden. And the Nets found a guy in Ben Simmons who fits what they want. Now, the ramp-up period, I have no idea what the delay is. I don't know if it's he's not in game shape. I don't know if it's he's still getting his mentals right. I don't know.
I think my best guess, and this is all speculation, and this is the best I can do. I think that what this is the Nets trying to justify the whole mental health thing. Because if he would have just played right away, then that is a horrific look for Ben Simmons. Absolutely abominable. If he just changes teams and suits up in the first game right afterwards, like, dude, come on. Then it is a true mockery of the mental health system, whatever ways to call it. I think they had to legitimize the whole mental health thing in order to protect the image of Ben Simmons. But speaking of Ben Simmons, Danny Green made some very interesting comments on his, I guess he has a podcast. He goes, quote, "We all know Ben Simmons, does not like to play in Philly. So if he does play in that game on March 10th, I'd be highly surprised." And he had a bunch of other comments. I feel like it is absolutely imperative Ben Simmons plays in that game. Like, he's got to conquer his demons here. Like, the road goes through Philly. You got to go in there and you just got to handle it and you got to go through it. If he wimps out and chickens out of playing in that environment, I will be so disappointed. And that will tell me all I need to know about Ben Simmons. You got to play in that game, man. Like, whatever issues you got going on, you got to confront them and you got to hit them head on. I know I'm not a doctor, but come on. Like, this is your moment. You can't chicken out.
I agree to a certain extent. If he hasn't played yet, I think he has a little leeway to not play in that March 10th game. But if he's already played in 3 or 4 games by that point and he decides not to play in Philadelphia, it's definitely a tough look for Ben Simmons. I would love nothing more than for Ben Simmons to go into that game on the first possession, pull up from 3 and cash it. Like, that would be the ultimate FU to the Philly fan base, to Daryl Morey and his teammates, to show, hey, yeah, I was scared of shooting the playoffs last year. Guess what? I'm over it. I'm a new player, and I'm ready to show you guys that I'm going to take it out on your franchise for the next 4 years while I'm in Brooklyn, that I was the guy you should have built around and not Joel Embiid. Remind you, Simmons was the first overall pick in the draft. Embiid was third. Based
Hang
on
hang
that,
That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not fair. That's not fair. No, that's wrong. It's not wrong.
Listen. Should have. Not saying should have been based off projection. Ben Simmons' team. Embiid's a better player.
No, that's
Embiid's
ridiculous.
a more likable character.
No, that's preposterous.
I'm saying if you're the number one overall pick, you see a guy who comes in number 3 the next year.
Hang on, no.
Your team. When you're the
First of
number
all,
one overall pick, they build around you. I'm telling you, the Sixers made the right choice. Embiid's better. He's more valuable. He's a unicorn. He might be the best player in the NBA. I'm not saying the Sixers did anything wrong. I'm saying in Simmons' mind, which we know might not be the most firm, it's a little fragile. You know what I'm saying? Like in his mind, he was the first overall pick when the process began. This whole process started with getting Ben Simmons number 1 overall, and to have a guy come in next year drafted lower than you to all of a sudden become a beloved figure.
Your facts are wrong.
In the city.
Embiid was drafted in like 2014 or 15. Ben Simmons was drafted in like 18 or 19. So you got your numbers right.
Simmons was definitely drafted the year before.
No way. Absolutely not. All right,
I'm looking it up right now. You look it up.
Joel Embiid was drafted in 2014. And
Simmons the next year?
2016.
Okay.
Anyway.
My point's a little off. I stand corrected. My point was off. I could have sworn Simmons was drafted the year before. I guess it was because Embiid missed his first 2 years. Embiid came after and played the year after Simmons. I stand corrected. Hand up. My bad. You are right for once, Frank. For once, you made a valid point.
But regardless, you circling back even further, Joel Embiid would have been the first overall pick if he never hurt his foot going into the draft. He was a lock to be the first overall pick. And I remember we debated this on the Sportsmanlike Conduct, and I believe I actually lost the point. It was me against Pat Lowndes. And he was like, you got to take Joel Embiid, even though we knew his foot was broken and he wasn't going to play that year. And obviously foot injuries, big man, those are the biggest red flags in the history of red flags. And I argued Andrew Wiggins, and I believe I still lost the point, which is something I've never gotten over. But either way, Ben, the whole first pick, third pick thing, I think is a moot point because Embiid, maybe in Ben Simmons' mind, makes sense. But whatever. Moving on. So Sixers, Timberwolves on Friday night. James Harden makes his debut. Mike, I want to go through a couple scenarios here. Is it fair to say, with 100% certainty, Kevin Durant never gets hurt on January 15th? James Harden still a Brooklyn net? Yes or no? Just give me yes or no.
Yes.
If there's no vaccine mandate and Kyrie Irving is eligible to play all the games, Kyrie Irving is still a Brooklyn net.
You mean James Harden?
James Harden's still a Brooklyn net.
Most likely.
And the third one was, no matter how this would have played out, James Harden was so insistent on leaving the Nets that he was going to end up a Sixer no matter what. That was always his quote-unquote grand plan.
No.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out I guess the sliding doors moment here for James Harden. It's very, very weird. But either way, he makes his debut on Friday night for the Sixers. I think he's going to come out in this game. I already bet on the Sixers. They were favored by 3 at last check. I think it should be 5.5 or 6. I think there's no chance the Sixers lose this game. I think they go out there and they make an absolute statement that this is they're, at least for this little honeymoon phase, that the Sixers are the team that you don't want to face right now, with Harden playing absolutely out of his mind and obviously Embiid probably being the MVP favorite. I think they made a statement here on Friday night.
The line right now is still 2.5.
Oh, it's at 2.5 on your end? Damn, I wanted it at 2.5, but I got it at 3.
I just put $20 on it.
In what scenario unless Harden and Embiid throw fists at each other, I don't see how they lose this game.
It's also a back-to-back for Minnesota too. So, I don't know. Minnesota is not bad. They have a bunch of guys who can score, and I think now without not that Simmons was playing, but Philadelphia is not a great defensive team, and Harden does not help that equation whatsoever. And there may be a little adjustment period for those two, but I think we're going to see an elite performance from James Harden tonight. And between him and Embiid, it's just going to be too much for Minnesota. I think they're going to put on a show, and I agree. It may take them a little while to mesh as far as finding winning basketball come postseason time, but in a regular season game against Minnesota, you're right. I should have put more than $20 on it.
I mean, you still can. You still got time. But I don't know. It could be a trap. It could just be one of those lines that is just too good to be true. But, Mike, how much pressure would you say is on James Harden here to have a successful tenure in Philly? Obviously, throughout his career, whether it was being with Westbrook and Durant with the Thunder, being with, Dwight, I believe the order was Dwight Howard first, then Chris Paul, then Russell Westbrook. So he's had elite teammates everywhere he's been, undoubtedly, but has never gotten to the peak, the pinnacle, winning championship. Obviously, he played one finals with the Thunder when he was the sixth man coming off the bench. But maybe you could argue that Chris Paul just never. There's so many what ifs with James Harden, but how much pressure is on Harden to make this work with Joel Embiid? Because this feels like this is Harden's last gasp at finally winning a championship.
What's the biggest number you can think of right now?
What are you talking about?
Just what's the biggest number you can think of right now? Think of the biggest number you think of.
999 trillion.
All right, quadruple that by affinity. That's the amount of pressure James Harden's under right now. He has now forced his way out of two different franchises in less than 2 calendar years. He has gotten back to the position that, quote unquote, he always wanted to be in. Reunited with Daryl Morey, playing with an elite big man in Joel Embiid in a city that, quote unquote, he thinks he will be happy in long term. James Harden has destroyed the Houston franchise. James Harden tried to undermine the Brooklyn Nets franchise. And now he's in a position where, with his age and his declining ability, with a supermax extension or whatever his $250 million extension on the line, he has to prove that he is worth that in the next coming months as he gets older in his career and his abilities and athleticism declines, to where this is his best chance to win a title. The East is wide open right now. The East is completely wide open. You can make an argument that Joel Embiid is the best player in the Eastern Conference alongside Giannis Antetokounmpo and Kevin Durant. Durant's hurt, so take him out of the equation. And Embiid's your front runner for MVP right now. So I think the pressure is immense, and that's a terrifying thing if you're a Sixers fan, because James Harden, throughout the history of his career, has not been particularly clutch when the pressure ratchets up. We've seen him fizzle in playoff series when Houston needed him the most. We've seen when things weren't going well in Brooklyn, Harden take some nights off. I don't think he can afford that luxury here in Philadelphia, where they traded the whole kit and caboodle to get him.
No, they didn't.
Maybe not the whole kit and caboodle, but at least the caboodle and half the cat. And now he is in a position to where he got what he wanted. And when you get what you wanted, it's on you to make it work. It's up to James Harden to figure out how to play alongside Joel Embiid, to not disrupt everything Philadelphia wants to do offensively, and to find a way to deliver this city a championship. It is on James Harden's back.
So, Mike, you have good sources inside that Sixers organization. What are you hearing about how James Harden looks, and what can we expect from him?
I'll just tell you this, that the first day Harden came to work out in Philadelphia, there's 2 practice courts in the arena. Someone could have committed a murder on the court that Harden and Embiid weren't on, and it would have gone unnoticed. There could have been a Wild West gunfight, and not a single camera would have turned around, because every camera was fixated on James Harden and Joel Embiid working out and doing step backs together. So all eyes are on Harden. It's put up or show up. He looks good from what I hear. It looks like he's, insanely skilled. The exact quote I got was, he's huge.
Right.
I never got clarity on if that meant wide, tall, whatever.
Yeah, that's honestly a terrible quote, because when you're talking about James Harden, that could be interpreted in millions of ways.
I can't. I'm not going to put my boy on the spot here, but he's big guy.
How excited are the Sixers about James Harden?
Ecstatic. They felt they needed somebody to fill that role as a legitimate playmaker and scorer, to take some of the ease off Embiid and create opportunities for everyone else. Because Tobias Harris hasn't been great this year. Maxi's coming on, and that they were getting nothing from that Simmons position. And they got exactly a guy who can do 2 of those 3 things in one. So they are ecstatic with James Harden.
Well,
at least for this year. We'll see what happens next year, but at least for the present, ecstatic.
All right, moving on to All-Star Weekend. Let's start with Mike. You probably have better philosophy on this than I do. I feel like the Elam Ending, which is what the All-Star game is, where there's target score going in the fourth quarter that you have to get to. I feel like that the idea of every game ending on a quote unquote buzzer beater would be so epic for the game of basketball. It would eliminate the whole foul shooting thing at the end because you can't just give away those points because every point becomes so valuable, especially when you're within 2 and 3 points that you can't afford to give up a basket. I feel like the Elam ending, if basketball just changed the rules to do it, because let's face the reality. Every pickup game you ever played, whether it's 11, 21, 25, 30, whatever you play to, every game ends on a basket. And I feel like that would, especially in the whole social media age and the celebrations that would be a direct result of all this stuff, would be so great for the game of basketball. And I feel like it would be really, really exciting. Obviously, it's a massive change in the rules, and I don't feel like it actually would ever truly happen. But I'm a huge fan of it, and just in terms of the positive effects and ramifications it can have in the game, I think would be extremely positive in every conceivable way.
I'm actually anti-Elam Ending.
Of course, because you're playing, you're a traditionalist. You like the.
First and foremost, I bet on the over in the All-Star game, and I thought it was the easiest lock of my life. I didn't realize it was going to an Elam Ending, so I didn't even watch the fourth quarter.
Well, that's why you watch the rules.
Yeah, well, I'm an idiot, and I was so devastated when I woke up, because I put a lot of money. I was like, that's way too low. Like, and I'm stupid, and yeah, I should have looked at the rules, hand up once again, but devastated. My issue with the Elam Ending is there's already not enough defense in basketball, and for 3 quarters, teams don't try. And you look at the All-Star game, where it's just chuck, because it doesn't matter really how far the lead gets to, because the Elam Ending, it limits it, and like I don't know. It makes a difference. No one plays defense when there's a target score. It's like you're playing at 21. No one plays defense till it's 18-18. And you could say, yeah, it's the same thing when it's the fourth quarter, but
right, you can absolutely say the exact same thing.
But it's different because you have this much time to make a comeback as opposed to 3 points. And there's so much random stuff that can happen. I'm just anti-Elam Ending. I think there's an excitement to playing great defense on the last possession that, someone misses a buzzer beater. We'll lose the dramatic effect of a buzzer beater if every single game ends in a buzzer beater. Imagine every baseball game had to end on a walk-off hit. Like
that's so much that you can't credit to.
Why not? It's the same in theory. It's the same premise. Like,
because there could be a walk, there could be a hit by pitch, there could be an error. You mean just the idea of a walk-off?
I mean, I just don't like it. Yeah, I'm a traditionalist, so yeah, that's probably the bottom line basis of my disdain for the Elam Ending. I think it's great in the All-Star game. I think it's great for the TBT tournament. Like, in certain settings, I think it is valuable, but I'm just not a fan of it on a day-to-day basis. Like, imagine we had 23, or there's 32 teams, or 30 teams in the league. Imagine if we had 15 buzzer beaters each night. Like,
well, I mean, yeah. Listen, and the reality of the situation is it's never going to happen. I would love if it did happen because I think it would be incredible to watch. But point aside, all right. Last thing. Well, 2 more things. The dunk contest.
Incredible to watch for 2 nights, and then you would miss real basketball.
All right, so let's move on to the dunk contest real quick. Dunk contest, as we've grown up with it, it's over. It's done. That concept is so outdated that it cannot continue like this. So there are a couple avenues that we could go. First of all, I do think that if the Stars did participate in it, then that we wouldn't be having an issue. But none of the good players want to do it, so that creates this trickle-down effect. And so the first scenario is 1 Stars, which is it's not going to happen. The Stars aren't going to do it, so that idea is out. Number 2 is just get rid of it entirely and pretend like it, and just move on like it never existed. One idea that I do have as an alternative to the dunk contest is you have a court and you have spots on the court, and each spot's worth a certain point value. You have like 90 seconds to 2 minutes to accumulate as many points as you want. Whether you can half courts like 5 points, obviously a 3 is 3, and then a dunk is 2, and then you just have like Steph Curry and Durant just like chucking off shots from all over the court and see who comes out with the best score after those 2 minutes. I think that would be really exciting and less pressure than a dunk contest. Bill Simmons' idea was a 90-second choreographed routine, which then I feel like that would need a lot of practice, so I don't know how plausible that is. And the last one, which I think would be great, but I don't see how plausible it is a posterization contest. Because let's face it, like the only dunks that go viral are posters. You do not see a single uncontested dunk that comes from an NBA player that goes viral. It's got to be. They're all poster dunks, and to put that embarrassment on another player is that's probably the biggest reason why I don't see it happening. But that would be a potential avenue. But of those scenarios, or which one do you like the best, or which one do you have something better?
This was Stephen A. Smith's idea, which I kind of like, but do it by city. So like there'd be for like Memphis, like John Morant would coach, and you get the 3 best dunkers in the city of Memphis, amateurs, like just random people. They could apply, and it's a dunk contest coached by Morant and LeBron, the best dunkers from LA, and get some guys who all they do is dunk into the dunk contest, and that way there's stars involved without actually having to do it. I kind of like that idea. I agree with you. If some of the stars in the NBA did some of the dunks that we saw on, was it Friday night or Saturday night?
Yeah.
The dunks they're just better. It's hard to get excited for Obi Toppin. Like, sorry. He just doesn't move the needle for me whatsoever. And when they miss 7 dunks before they make it, it's impossible. Like I can't get excited for that. Moment. Yeah, you get really 2 tries, but ideally should be the first. Like I don't think you should be able to get a 50 if it's not the first attempt. I don't have the perfect fix. I think people expect to see something new and spectacular every year. I don't think they realize there are only so many things you could do with the ball in 1.5 seconds in the air to finish a dunk. Like there's only so many different, like your body can't transform into a car and then dunk. Like the human body is limited. You could go between your legs, behind the back, do a reverse, catch it. Like there's only so many things. And I think we've almost maximized the potential and reach of what dunks can and can't be done. And with social media, I mean, back in the 1980s and early 90s with LeBron and Dominique, they were doing things that no one had seen because no one had YouTube and no one had Twitter or TikTok. And now there's professional dunkers who just do cool dunks on TikTok. So when an NBA player pulls it out in a dunk contest, like, oh, I saw that 3 years ago on TikTok. Yeah, there's only so many things you can do. So I don't know what the fix is. I actually listen to the same Bill Simmons podcast. I kind of love the layup contest idea, Frank. I think that would be the best alternative.
The layup one is interesting.
I actually love that. And I actually think that would be my vote moving forward. Get rid of the dunk contest and alternate every year. Dunk contest, layup contest, dunk contest, layup contest. And I think that would keep it more fresh, less stale, and invite more creativity because you have 2 years to think of different ideas than, 1 year. And like Simmons said, you can't practice these. Can you imagine how much these guys would get, roasted on social media if they got caught practicing? So that's how I would fix it. But it's a broken system.
Right. Yeah, I don't love the layup thing. Last thing before we go, I just want to say a couple things about Major League Baseball. So they had a meeting. They've been meeting every day until the 28th because on the February 28th is when the deadline is. And if they don't have a deal by the 28th, then they start canceling games. And every day that they don't have a deal, more and more games get canceled, whatnot. So the Thursday meeting ended early because the two sides, quote, had nothing more to discuss. Baseball, man, the nickel and diming that's going on right now. I'm not going to pretend like I know every single issue that's going on in baseball, but you're a dying sport. Figure it the hell out and stop the nonsense. I can't believe that we've reached this point where no one actually really knows what like the biggest issue is with baseball. They're just seeing the news that the two sides are acting like petulant children and nothing was, it's going to keep eroding. But I do believe that by the 28th, because deadlines lead to results. That's why the trade deadline, that's why the Sixers were able to get James Harden, because there was a deadline. If you don't go do it by this time, you're not going to get him. So I do believe that by the 28th that the players will probably have to cave, and we will have baseball because those games that don't get played are not being made up, and you start losing money. So that's where I believe this is going. But the fact that this is even going on is a joke to baseball, and it's killing the game.
I just can't believe it's lasted this much or lasted this far. Like, I understand the two sides are very far apart. I think what the players are asking for is relatively reasonable in the grand scheme of things. And I know the owners never like to cave on anything because they're greedy and they want more money. And honestly, that's their right. So good for them, I guess. I always lean towards the players because I think they're the ones out there delivering the product, and they should be rewarded fairly and compensated fairly for that, down to the minor leagues and through the whole system. But I can't believe it's lasted this long. And we are approaching a deadline where we can miss regular season games, Frank. I just can't believe it has got to the point where we may not have a day on March 31st.
So that is the state of Major League Baseball, and that will do it for this edition of the Lucas Lucas podcast. Make sure you tune in as James Harden drops a 35-point triple-double in a Sixers win over the Timberwolves on Friday night.